Hey everybody, it's Kim from It Again Bookstore in Swanee, Georgia, and today we're here with Christopher Swann. His new book, Never Turn Back, came out a couple weeks ago?
October 6th. Yep.
October 6th. Congratulations. This is your second book, right?
Yes, ma'am.
A lot more in the pipeway?
I got a third just turned into my editor, so we'll see what she says. But yeah.
Congratulations. Cool. Okay, I'll intro you and then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Christopher Swann is a novelist and high school English teacher in Atlanta, Georgia. A graduate of the Woodberry Forest School in Virginia, he earned his Ph.D. in creative writing from Georgia State University. In 2018, Chris was a Townsend Prize finalist, a finalist for Georgia Author of the Year, and longlisted for the Southern Book Prize. He lives with his wife and two sons in Atlanta, where he is an English department chair at Holy Innocents Episcopal School. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much. Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yeah. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Absolutely. So Never Turn Back, right here. Beautiful cover. Thanks for Good Lane Books for doing that. It's a story of a young man, Ethan Faulkner, who is a high school English teacher in Atlanta.
Right, what you know, man. Right,
a little bit, yeah. And I deviate from that some. He's popular with students. He's got a budding romantic relationship, maybe, which is kind of remarkable because he's got a tragic past. About 10 years earlier, he and his sister, Susannah, little sister, were tragically and violently orphaned, had to go live with their only living relative, their Uncle Gavin, who turns out is more than a little bit shady. And Ethan's turned his back on that and trying to move forward with his life. And then his sister shows up out of the blue on his doorstep. She brings trouble with her, and he's got to deal with that, as well as finally confront his own past. Mm-hmm. And I got a section from the beginning of the book, real short, that I wanted to read, to give you a sense of what the characters are like and what the relationship's like. And this happened, this is right near the beginning. Ethan has come home Saturday morning, a little hungover and doing a little bit of a walk of shame. He's been at a conference in downtown Atlanta, and he had a one-night stand with one of the conference attendees, and he's snuck out the next morning and is heading home. And when he gets home, he finds his sister in his house. So, don't get me wrong, I'm glad to see my sister. It's just that her sudden reappearances can be jarring. She operates on her own timetable, rarely calls or emails, and disappears for months at a time. So seeing Susannah in the flesh is really the only confirmation I ever get that she's even alive. Whenever I'd complain about something Susannah had done, like taking my books from my bedroom without asking, or eating the last pack of peanut butter crackers in the pantry, Mom would commiserate, but she always ended those talks the same way. I know it's hard having a little sister, she'd say in her Irish lilt, but she's your little sister, Ethan. She's the only one you've got. This was a refrain both of my parents often used to impress upon me the importance of being Susannah's big brother, the unique role I was to play in her life. But once she was old enough to ride a tricycle, Susannah came to feel insulted by the idea that she could possibly need me to protect her. I was inclined to agree. People who messed with Susannah were more likely to need me to protect them from her. When I was 12 and Susannah was 9, a budding bully in our neighborhood named Jake called my curly-haired sister Brillo Head. The next day, Jake was riding his bike, a red Diamondback Octane, when the brakes failed to work and he crashed into a utility pole, breaking his forearm and collarbone. When Jake's little brother told the rest of us in the cul-de-sac about Jake's accident, I looked at Susannah. She gave me a ghost of a smile only I could see. More chilling than that smile was the pair of needle-nose pliers I found sitting in my dresser that evening, the perfect tool for snipping a brake line on a bike. I put the pliers back where they belonged, in the toolbox in our garage, but said nothing, partly because I couldn't prove anything, but also because I didn't want to upset Mom and Dad. Mom, because she would cry. Dad, because I didn't know how he would react. A year after the bike incident, we were orphans. So that gives you a sense of who Ethan is and his relationship with his sister, what she's like.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so do your students read your books?
It's really funny when my first book, Shadow of the Lions, came out. We have a bookstore. I work in a private school in Atlanta, and we have a campus shop. And I did a book signing there, and one of my freshman students, I'd only been teaching her for a couple of weeks. She came in, saw me sitting behind a table, and she picked up my book and looked at me and looked at the book again, opened it and looked at my picture, and I'm sitting there, just sort of smiling like an idiot. And she's like, "Did you write this?" And I said, yeah, I did. She's like, can I buy this anywhere? They charge a lot of money in this store. And I said, yeah, you can buy it anywhere. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I mean, they're not all in the back of my car. You can go to a bookstore, Amazon, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that just made me laugh. Mm-hmm. Because when you write a book and it's out in the world, your whole, you're like, I wrote a book. I mean, I kind of feel, with the pandemic, I kind of feel like I'm standing in a firestorm going, yeah, but I wrote a book. Could you please? But so my students, I don't make a big deal about it, because the last thing I want to do is be like, well, when I wrote my novel, like I'm not interested in that at all. And but there have been students at school who have read it, and who have, former students of mine especially have, and one or two even, they had to research an American author, and one or two in their junior year, one or two of them chose me for some reason, and read the book and did a presentation on it. And that was a little surreal, but it was pretty cool. So
what? Well, okay, this has distracted me. If you move your head over a little bit.
Which way? This way?
The other way.
The other way.
Yeah. Look, right. My bookshelf lines up with your bookshelf.
That's crazy.
Right?
I'm looking at that. Yeah.
I'm like, didn't plan that. Okay. So is that Wilson on in the picture behind you?
No, that's not Wilson. That was, but yeah, Wilson's a dog that Ethan has and never turned back. Little mini ducks, and we had a mini ducks, and now that's Mackenzie. Yeah, she's gone on to the great doghouse in the sky several years ago. But yeah, I have a dog. We have another dog, Ollie, that's running around here. He might show up and make an appearance.
I like dogs.
Yeah. We had the picture up here when I first set up in this room. Like, the rest of my house is a disaster, but this is the only. So this.
It looks great. Yeah, this one corner looks fabulous.
Right. No, it's not that bad. But yeah, I realized that this was fun. I was like, I thought about moving it. It's like, no, we're going to keep that up there.
Perfect. So. Yeah, because I mean, one, it's a cute picture, and then two, you have a dachshund in here, so
yeah,
it's perfect. So, what was the difference between writing your first book and writing your second book? Did you do anything different? Did you learn something?
When you write your first book, you get it published. Like I'm writing the second one was a lot harder in some ways. Part of it was because you have this level of expectation that you put on yourself. I mean, I'm like an officially published author. Like, my book came out, and you could buy it in bookstores, and it got nice reviews.
Got great reviews.
I got nominated for awards. It got written up in the New York Times Book Review. I mean, every possible thing I could think of. I joke, like, Kim, I got to go to the private writers only party at the Decatur Book Festival. I mean, I'd arrived. Right?
Cool. Yeah.
And none of that means anything when you sit down and you're going to write book number 2. I mean, it means a little bit in the sense that you can do it. I have an agent, which is a magical unicorn that a lot of people spend years trying to get as writers. But yeah, I thought it would be easier, even though I know that the sophomore novel or the sophomore album or any artistic product is the second one's supposedly harder than the first. And yeah, I struggled with it. It was hard to put together and plot it in a way that made sense.
Well, speaking of plot, TM says here, Chris, since there is no true fiction, what was your inspiration behind writing Never Turn Back?
Sure. Hey, Mike, how are you? It's a friend of mine. there is a story that this came from something that happened in my family. I went to boarding school. So I lived in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Grew up in North Carolina, moved down to Atlanta when I was 18, so a long time ago. But before then, I was in boarding school in Virginia. And at home, there's something that happened at home while I was away, my parents' house. My dad was a banker and for 35 years, and he had this unvarying ritual every night. He'd come home, he'd have a gin and tonic or two, have some Triscuits with cheese. He'd watch the news until about 7:30 or 8. Then he'd go upstairs and have what he called a lie down, take a nap for about an hour and a half or two. Then he'd get up and he'd have a late dinner with my mother. And then mom would go to bed and dad would stay up doing paperwork. Our house, because of that, and because he'd stay up past midnight, our house was usually the last in our cul-de-sac to turn the lights off. So one night, it was like 11:30. Mom had gone to bed. Dad's doing paperwork, and he thinks he hears somebody running in the street outside, which is unusual because we lived in this small cul-de-sac, only about 5 or 6 houses. And we're at the very end of it on the circle. And this is Winston-Salem, not a large city. And then he realizes someone's running down the front walk. And right when he realizes that, there's a pounding in the front door and a doorbell ringing. Dad goes and opens it, and there's this young woman who's like, help me, please, they're chasing me. She's all disheveled. And he looks in the yard, and he looks in the street, nobody. So he lets this young woman in, calls my mom, has her come downstairs. And he said, for some reason, he turned the lights off. And that was unusual because he was a man of habit. And so that would be the last thing he'd do before he'd go to bed. Later, he said, I didn't even think about it. I just felt like I needed to turn the lights off. So we did. And they moved to the back of the house, to the den. This young woman had been in a car with her boyfriend and some other men, and they got in an argument, and they'd sort of thrown her out of the car. So she'd run down the street and then turned into our cul-de-sac and made a beeline for the one house that had its lights on. While she's saying this, my dad said, that's when I heard a car turn into the cul-de-sac, slowly go down the road, and then come into the circle and stop, idling almost exactly outside my house. This young woman starts panicking and freaking out, and my parents try to calm her down. And then after a minute, the car slowly rolled on and drove off into the night and disappeared. My mom called the police, and they came to pick up the young lady. She wasn't really happy, but my dad's like, I'm not taking you home, miss. I'm sorry. And officer took her home, and that was the end of it. And my parents called me and told me about that weekend. Like, we normally talk every week and by phone. And my first thought was, wow, I'm glad nobody was hurt. My second thought as a 16-year-old boy was like, man, I missed it. Like the most exciting thing that happened to my family, and I'm gone, right? But as I got older, I realized that story got scarier. What if Dad hadn't turned the lights off and they'd realized that this woman they were looking for was there? What if they'd gotten out of the car? What if they tried to come in the house? So that's the starting point for writing Never Turn Back. It's not the opening scene, but we learned pretty early on that, there's a home invasion that Ethan and Susannah are still living with the repercussions of. So that was the point that set out the story.
Susannah's got some mental health issues, but you imply that she was always difficult.
Yeah, she was. She's Ethan's little sister. And the opening scene I wrote for them was the night that there's this home invasion, which of course they don't yet know about, and they're having dinner. And I had in my head what they're going to be doing. And Susannah, the first thing I did, at that point, she's 10. She's like, in my head, she's like, nope, I'm not doing that. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, you're supposed to. She's like, I'm not eating the peas. It's like, okay. So I started writing the scene like she's refusing to eat the food. And the scene went from there. And that became, she's like, no. So she's like that with the characters in the book, and she's like that in my own head. And that seems weird, like
I just read an article about authors whose characters speak to them in their head. So it's not a weird thing. It happens.
I mean, I'm not hallucinating her like she's
Yeah.
sitting on the couch and having a conversation with her, but I have her in my head, what she sounds like and what she does and what she looks like and how she walks and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she just refused. So that was sort of her character note. And I wanted to write, I wanted a strong female character. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I've got at least one in this book, hopefully maybe two. And she's difficult and she struggled. Ethan and Susannah suffered differently from this home invasion, mm-hmm. and they reacted to it differently. Ethan's moved on. I'm trying not to give away much of the plot, but Ethan's kind of moved on, has a career, and is happy and settled. And Susannah is pretty much the opposite. Like the part I read, she disappears for months at a time and then just sort of shows up out of the blue. Mm-hmm. So, what would it be like? I like characters that have made mistakes or are damaged in some way, and they're trying to kind of deal with that, because perfect characters are boring.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
who's your favorite character that you wrote in the book?
Susie.
Yeah.
I like Ethan a lot. Ethan's a little like me, but I don't have the dark baggage. And he's also a little more, hopefully he's a little more selfish, but he was fun to write, but Susannah was the one that just sort of, seemed to take a life of her own. And I've got a sequel in the works for this, and it's going to be, Susie's going to be front and center in that one.
Oh, is that the one you just turned in?
No, I turned in a different one. While we sent off Never Turn Back and then was working in edits, I had finished a draft of the third one. It's a standalone. Mm-hmm. Call it The Mountain Novel. It's set in Western North Carolina. It's another crime thriller. Mm-hmm. But so that's with my editor right now. So we'll see what she says. Sure. But yeah, the next one I'm going to write is going to be a sequel to Never Turn Back. Yeah.
So you write mostly so far like mysteries, suspenseful mysteries. Do you read those too, or is that your favorite to read?
Yeah, when I was a kid, my grandfather gave me, I think I actually have it here. Yeah. And it's this ancient beat up book.
Wow.
This is the collected complete Sherlock Holmes, everything. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, the pages are brown, right?
Love it.
It's a great book. I inhaled this thing, mm-hmm. and I didn't understand everything. It's late Victorian, Edwardian England, mm-hmm. But I loved them, and I kept rereading them. Mm-hmm. And part of it was, I was like, why am I rereading these? Because I know what happens. Mm-hmm. How did this guy make it work? Like, how did he make the mystery? And also I love the characters. I love Holmes and Watson, both of them. So that early on got me interested in writing mysteries or thrillers. You said earlier, I've got a Ph.D. in creative writing. I've come from the academy. Like, I formally studied this stuff in school. Mm-hmm. And there's a criticism of creative writing grads that they can write really beautifully about not very much. And that's not really fair or true, but there's a tiny bit of truth to it. And that in a lot of programs, your form and style and focus on character and literary elements, those take precedence over plots, just sort of this thing. Like, and don't write genre, but what if you want to write science fiction? Mm-hmm. You can do that, and it can be a great book as well. I like mysteries because a really good story, every good story, has got a mystery in it somehow. I mean, it might not be a crime, but it'll be okay. What happened? What's going to happen next anyway? Right? Is Hamlet going to finally get off his butt and avenge his father? Is Jane Eyre going to get together with Mr. Rochester or St. John Rivers? Or just, I don't need a man. Forget what's going to happen. So, yeah.
Mike, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Don't quit. I've wanted to do this since I was 13.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can tell looking at me, but it's been a while since I've been 13, and that's all right. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to write, not so much what I. A lot of younger writers think, well, I should write this kind of book.
Mhm.
A friend of mine, another writer named Ed Tarkenton, he wrote. Yeah, he lives in Tennessee, and he was writing about the first book he wrote was the book he thought he was supposed to write because he's about my age, and we're all male writers, so I have to write this sort of gritty, dark story about a a corrupt cop who was dealing with narcos in the Colorado Rockies. And Ed's a high school English teacher, in Nashville. So we're and he and I are fairly, again, about the same age. We both teach high school, and it didn't work for him. And my first novel that I wrote didn't work
Mhm.
for me, and it's under my bed and it's going to stay there. But we learned, don't write what you think you're supposed to write. You um, write the kind of story you love and that and it doesn't have to be about your life at all. But
Mhm.
if you're like, no, I like this kind of story, I want to write these kind of stories, then do that and don't quit. If you get any kind of suggestion from anybody, especially people you don't know who are positive, if you get any kind of positive feedback, like not for us, but try again,
Mhm.
right? Keep doing it. The only reason I'm published is because I didn't stop. I didn't quit. Um, and do you have to write every day? No, I don't. I probably should, but just don't stop.
So, was reading and writing important in your family growing up?
Thanks, Michelle. That's a good question. Yes. My grandfather was a high school English teacher, and I didn't really know that. He had been a high school English teacher before he went to serve in the Navy in World War II. And when he came back, he and my grandmother opened up a gift shop in Castries, North Carolina, for like
Mhm.
50 years. But so I always knew him as he's granddad, and he ran a gift shop.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I was an adult that I found out he'd been a high school English teacher, or that I really realized it. But
Mhm.
he loved books. He had collections of Shakespeare. I've got this collection of Shakespeare up here. These little tiny books up here.
So what I
Um,
love about doing these home type interviews is that the authors are like, "Yes, here's the book that was handed down to me, and I love it." Like,
yeah,
you did that, and then I've had other authors do it. So if we'd done this in the store, they couldn't be like, "Here is the actual book I read growing up." And
yeah.
it's
I've done
on the
some of
front.
that before. I have like a bag I'll bring, and I'll be like, "Oh, look, here's my copy of Sherlock Holmes." But yeah, I wouldn't have my grandfather's,
Yeah.
Shakespeare up here. But um, and I learned to read. My mom would say I learned how to read around the time I learned how to walk, which is not true, but she's my mom.
I
She can
felt
say
like
that.
it, yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, I think I've always loved story, and everything for me goes back to narrative, and that's how I teach. Um, that's that's what I've always been interested in. I've written a handful of poems, maybe six, and it's probably seven too many. But and I love poetry and I love teaching it. But yeah, writing for me, it's about writing story. So
and you put Robert Frost and Shakespeare in here.
yeah,
Give them a good bit.
yeah. Again, some of that's write what you know,
Mhm.
but I like reading books where authors do that in a way that makes sense for the character. It's not just to let me, and I hopefully it doesn't come across like that and never turn back. It's like, let me show off how I know Robert Frost, look at me. Um, but no, I mean, Shakespeare
Mhm.
and Macbeth is referenced in this and quoted in here, and Ethan's teaching Macbeth. Um, and that's deliberate because Macbeth is this great play about a man who was a good man who could have been a great man who consciously decides to be evil. That's Macbeth. And he doesn't get tricked into it. He doesn't get forced to do evil things against his will. He knows what he's doing is evil.
Mhm.
Kills his own king in his own house. And then he keeps murdering other people to keep in power.
Mhm.
Um, and why would someone do that? So that's, thematically that's intertwined. And you don't need to know a thing about Macbeth or Shakespeare to read this book, but um, that I found that to be an inspiration for at least some of the story and for the characters.
Yes, we have books in stock and they're all autographed. So please stop by and pick one up. You can also buy it off our website or you can come in person. I always say support your local independent bookstore. It doesn't have to be us, but we would like it for it to be us.
Yeah, I'll do my little indie bookstore evangelism right now because I've always loved indie bookstores. I live in Atlanta, and there was a great one right in Buckhead called Oxford Books.
Yep.
In the 90s, and they overextended, and like every other, and also like most books, like they folded, and then other bookstores started folding, like Borders, which was not an indie.
We had a Borders in our shopping center for 7 years. We opened up before them, and
but and it was 7. We have great indie bookstores around Atlanta, but it's like Foxtail up in Canton. We've got Read It Again books up towards Johns Creek, Acapella.
They're friends.
But if you live where I live, people's initial reaction in Atlanta is like, well, you might as well be asking me to drive to South Carolina, which is ridiculous, but people are like, it's too far away.
Yeah.
But, these bookstores, first off, everybody's been hit by this pandemic. I know bookstores especially have been because they provide the sense of community, and it's hard to do that if you can't have people physically come in the store. It sounds like y'all are in certain ways now. We're now a little more familiar with, wear masks, wash your hands, social distance, that kind of thing.
You can come in the store, you just need a mask.
But, and I've been in big box bookstores where the staff know some things, but more often than not, they're selling a product, and it could be books or boots or baklava. Like they're just selling a thing. You go to an indie bookstore, they know what they're doing, right? I was in Park Road Books in Charlotte. I've told the story before, and I'll keep telling it. I'll tell it forever. I was there earlier for a book event I was having. I got there early, so I was wandering around the aisles, and I heard a customer come in and go up to the bookseller. He said, "Hi, can I help you?" She said, "Yeah, I'm looking for something like Gone Girl, but a little less dark, and with characters I might actually like." Yeah, and I started laughing because I'd read Gone Girl, and it was dark, and I was like, at the end of it, I didn't like the character. I didn't like any of the characters. Are all, they're in many ways, they're all horrible people. They're well drawn and all that in the story. And Gillian Flynn does a great job of the story. But the bookseller didn't miss a beat. She's like, "Yeah, okay, I've got 3. I got 3 suggestions. Come on." And I thought, that's why we need these guys. Because if I'd gone to, a big box bookstore, they'd be like, "What was the Gone Girl? Who do you know who wrote that?" And I'd be like, "You're Googling it." Like I could Google. Like, never mind. And while, the guy who owns the giant online retailer named after a South American river that we all have used, right? He doesn't need your $26.99 for a brand new book or whatever it is. The indie bookstores, you buy there, you're putting money in your community. You're helping them survive. So, if I would love everyone to buy my book, but if you can't buy my book, please buy something from Read It Again.
We have lots in stock, and they all came with these lovely book plates.
Yeah, sign them and mail those. And so anybody who's on here who, if you get one, if for any reason they run out, I will either send them more, or you can contact me through my website and I'll send you one.
Well, I love that. That's awesome. What does your writing process look like?
You're assuming I have a process.
Yeah, you published 2 books, so you must have some kind of process.
Yeah, I do a lot of writing in the summer because I teach at a private school, and my summer's off. I like to try to get the bulk of the writing done then, because I don't have any work duties in the summer. And then throughout the rest of the year, and it depends. If I start a book in the summer, I'll try to get a big chunk of it done, and then I can work on it at a slower pace once I get back to school. I like writing in the morning, but I have to have my coffee and wake up
Mhm.
So by the time that happens, I have to go to work. I tried getting up at 4 a.m. years ago and that was not. By the time my mind was ready to do anything, I had to, go to school.
Mm.
Um, so I'll write at night when it's quieter, when the kids have gone to bed.
Mhm.
Um, and try to get some stuff done on the weekend too. But uh, there was I'm trying to remember. I think it was, I can't remember the name of the book. Author Carolyn C. wrote years ago. It was basically about how to make a life as a writer.
Okay.
And she said 2 pages a day. That you will not hit that mark
Mhm.
every day. Maybe not even most days. Don't try the next day. Okay, I didn't do it, so now I'm going to get 4 pages. Like, nope, just 2. And
Mhm.
some days you'll get 2. Some days you might get 10.
Mhm.
Some days you'll get none. But just do 2. If you do that, that's manageable.
Mhm.
That's something you can do. And it seems a lot less overbearing than, oh my
Mhm.
God, I have to write like a 400-page novel. Like I've only got 20 pages. That's great. That's 20 more than nothing.
Yesterday, yeah.
So
Well, are
yeah,
you a
I do that.
pantser or a plotter?
Um, each book's been different.
Yeah.
With my first Shadow of the Lions, um, it's a mystery set in a boarding school where the main character Matthias gets in an argument with his best friend and roommate Fritz, and he's betrayed his buddy Fritz.
Mhm.
And Fritz runs away from him into the woods around the school. Matthias chases after him, can't find him, says fine, I'll talk to him after dinner. But he doesn't talk to him after dinner. Nobody does, because Fritz is gone, and no one finds him. Police, FBI, nobody.
Mm.
Um, once he vanishes, and I figured that was the opening scene in the book. And I didn't know what had happened to Fritz when I wrote that. I just was like, this is a great opening. I didn't want you to find his like dead body. It's going to be a murder mystery. I didn't want to write that because I was like, what if he vanished? Like that's worse. Like you can't, if someone's dead, they're dead, then you can grieve them and you can, you know, we have rituals for that. You don't have rituals for somebody who just disappears. But I didn't know what had happened to him. I'm like, I'll figure it out as I go along. Kind of like when reading a book. I figured out about a quarter of the way through writing that book. Like that's a dumb way to do it, at least for me.
Mhm.
I had to figure out, okay, what happened to him? What does his friend Matthias find out? How does he? Okay, then I can plot that out. Never Turn Back. I plotted it more,
Mhm.
but I struggled because I had a big flashback scene, and by big I mean like 50 to 60 pages right in the middle of it. And it just, story was going along and it just slammed, like hit a wall. And it was like, no, let me back up and tell you this stuff. And I thought it was all like, it was interesting, good stuff. And there's some good scenes, but it didn't work.
Mhm.
And so that book, yeah, I had to plot that out.
Mhm.
And figure out how do I take that, especially help with my editor. How do I take that big scene in the middle and
It's so twisty-turny. I imagine you have to plot that out.
yeah. And I think what's more important to me is coming up with characters that are interesting that you care about because there's only so many plots, right?
Mhm.
Only so many different kinds of stories, but every person is unique.
Mhm.
And I think that can go for literary characters too. So if you get invested in the character and you care, like if you don't really care, it could be a great story, but if you don't care about the characters, you're
Mhm.
not interested in them. My being at home in pandemic, I have 2 teenage boys. This last spring and summer, my wife and I are like, let's have like movie nights. Like, let's watch. And why don't we watch some old like things that my wife and I had seen? And had,
That's what we've been doing all summer, yeah.
well, one of the ones we picked was The Usual Suspects, and which I've shown that in class before, and um, that is such a bizarre
Mhm.
story, and talk about twists and turns and the big twist and surprise at the end, right? But the characters, the characters stand out and you remember them and you remember their lines. Um, you don't really remember all the ins and outs of the plot. That kind of leads you, like you get caught up in that and you're trying to follow it. But it's the characters you follow.
Mhm.
And so that's what I want to do when I'm writing a book. But yeah, I like things that happen. I like reading stories where things happen. They don't have to always involve guns or something, but yeah, something exciting. It's not just characters sitting around talking.
Mm-hmm.
There's some kind of. That's one reason I like crime, because when crime can affect anybody. It affects every demographic,
Mm-hmm.
and the way people react to crime tells you a lot about them. I was in college, and I had a Suzuki Samurai. I don't know if you remember the little Jeeps, and had a soft top on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in the Jeep to go to class and to drive to campus. Got in, started the car, and reached to turn the stereo on, and my hand went through a hole in the dash. And I looked down, and there's this hole where my car stereo had been, with wires sticking out. Someone had sliced open the soft top and gone in and stolen. I was furious. I drove to the police station. I filed a report.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me was thinking, the cop who took the report, and he was very polite and took it down serious. But part of me was thinking he'd be like, "Oh yeah, it sounds like George. Like George was the town ne'er-do-well. And he's like, me and the boys will, look in on him. And then the cops are going to like kick down George's door and then find him sitting at his kitchen table red-handed with my stereo, and George would go to jail and I would get my stereo back." And most of me knew I'm never going to see it again. It's gone, which is, unsurprisingly what happened. But I remember being so mad, like someone violated my car to steal this thing.
And those tops are expensive to replace.
And that was a pain in the butt to get that replaced. But it was an inconvenience for me. For some people, that would not be an inconvenience. That would be, I don't have $150 at the time to buy a new cheap car stereo. That's my one time of the day where I get to listen to music and wall out the world, or when I get to hear the news or whatever. And for me, I was like, man, someone stole my stereo. And the one I got for it, replace it, was probably better than the one that got stolen. Mm-hmm. Again, crime can tell you a lot about the people, how they react, and what their situation in life is like. But you want that violation. You want that wrong. You want that wrong righted. You want the world to make sense again, like that the bad guys are going to get punished. And so I like those kinds of stories, because you can write any kind of crime stories. Can be gritty. They can be more mysteries than thrillers, or they can be more thrillery. They can be psychological thrillers. They can be cozies. You got a wide range, and that's a sandbox I like to play in.
What was your first big purchase after your book hit the bestseller?
Let's see. What did I do? I put in hardwood floors in our bedroom.
Nice.
Which my wife was very happy about.
I bet, yeah.
I like that too. Got rid of the nasty carpet that was up there. It's funny because some of my coworkers at work are like, what are you doing here at the beginning? Didn't you write a book? I'm like, you have a highly romanticized view of publishing in the 21st century. Yeah, it's not like, well, I wrote a book, I'm going to retire to Hilton Head now. Maybe next year I'll write another one. Let's see. Like, that's not how it works.
Was that TV show with Nathan Fillion where he's a writer and he trails along with the police?
Oh yeah, Castle, I think.
Castle, yeah.
I maybe watched one episode. Yeah, I love Nathan Fillion. I hadn't seen that one. Yeah, but yeah, it's like he follows around. Like, this is what. Like, no, that's not. No.
Although probably if James Patterson asked somebody like the police department, they probably would let him follow around a cop.
Sure, but it's so I did that, and I'm like, well, I need a new pair of shoes, so I'm gonna go get. I mean, it's small stuff. It's mostly, and then books, and then sock it all away for save the remainder of it, or spend it on going in book tour, which now is all virtual, so I don't have to travel.
Yeah,
which is good and sad.
Yeah. How did you do research for the book?
The internet is a lovely thing. Mm-hmm. And other writers and I, we joke about how, God, we hope nobody ever
checks your search history.
Check the search history. I'm trying to remember who it was. I had writer friends who were talking, like they were at a Starbucks or something, and one of them's like, I'm trying to I'm trying to kill off this character, but I can't. I mean, the poison works too slowly. And everyone's like, no, you got to do it like this. So again, this deep discussion. And 10 minutes later, they look up and everyone is like moved away. And they're like, no, we're writers. And was like, sure.
Sure.
The Never Turn Back set in Atlanta. And I moved here in 1988. And I moved away for 3 years to go to grad school right after I got married, but then came back. And so I've been here and seen the way the city's grown. And the city is wild. It's huge. It's sprawling. There's so many different neighborhoods. Where I live, Sandy Springs, is just north of the city, just inside the perimeter, the highway that circles the city. It's a nice suburban area. We've got a public golf course and a park right down the street. But you get 10 miles south of here, and you'll get to English Avenue in Vine City. And 10 years ago, that area was pretty much, as I understand it, was like an open air heroin market. Now there's been a lot of urban renewal and rejuvenation and a lot of work in that area, in that place now, but it's not that's not far away. It's not like it's some far away city. And they're all driving and looking at all these different places in the city and thinking, I would like to have something happen here. That's one way. Google Maps is also great for that, because if I don't really feel like driving all the way, to Decatur right now. And what's the name of the street? Well, I can figure that out. Right. It's great. And then I looked up, my wife, Kathy's a psychologist. So sometimes I ask her about.
That would be a good resource.
She is, but I try not to bother her too much. She's my first reader. She's wonderful. She's a great editor. She's very honest, which every writer needs. Like, this is boring. Real men and women don't talk to each other this way. This scene is pretty good. But I did do some research, a little bit into, psychopathy, psychopaths, sociopaths, to play with some of the characters in my book.
Very cool. Okay, so I know you're a big reader. Can you recommend some books to us?
Absolutely. Let's see. I have a couple here. So I'll do this. Bull Mountain. It's Brian Panowich. He's become a good friend of mine. Appalachian Noir, I think, is set in North Georgia. It's like somebody took Shakespeare and The Godfather and dumped it in northern Georgia in crime. So that's an excellent one. I just read Tana French's new book, The Searcher, which is outstanding. But if you haven't read her before, this is one of my favorite ones by her, Faithful Place. Yeah, that was like her fourth, maybe fifth, third. It was a third book. And then what else? I had something else back here.
I always love doing this because I feel like, authors love playing bookseller.
Oh, yeah. I've actually got, wait a minute, I have my list. I'm going to forget somebody. I have a list here on my phone. Books to recommend. Sean Cosby, Blacktop Wasteland. I have that on my Kindle, so I don't have a copy to show you. But that came out earlier this year. It's fantastic. It's got a whole lot of buzz. And what else do I want? Emily Carpenter. I'm looking forward to her newest book.
I love her. Yeah.
Reviving the Hawthorne Sisters, I think, is the name of the upcoming one. Her books are great. Every Single Secret, I think, so far is my favorite. But
she blurbed your book too. I saw that.
She did, which was really nice. That it was. That's a really awkward part of this. When my first book came out, I was getting published. I said, "So how do we get blurbs?" And like, "How do you get blurbs?" And like, what do you mean, me? So I literally was like, "Hi, I follow you on Goodreads. Could you read my book? And if you like it, say something nice about it." And the the funniest thing about it, Kim, is that everybody I asked said yes, except for one person who I knew, a former professor of mine, a writer, who said, I would love to, but I'm so busy right now that I know if you send it to me, it would just sit in the stack and I disappoint you. And I don't want to do that. And so I'm going to say no. But I really, and I'll buy a copy when it comes, whatever it was, and I appreciated that. Yeah. So Emily's a good friend, and she's been a big supporter of me writing.
We had her on here with Kimberly Bell a few months ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I read Stranger in the Lake with Kimberly Bell and 3 Days Missing.
Yes.
I really, really liked.
Yeah.
I'll read everything, but yeah, I'm obviously I kind of gravitate towards crime, but all those books that I mentioned to you, they're all slightly different from each other, right? Emily writes more Southern sort of Gothic. Brian's writing books. They're noirish, but they're also set in rural, like northern Georgia, up in the mountains. It's Tana French, set in Ireland. So I like a variety.
I mean, you could hand 3 authors the exact same plot, and you would get a totally different book every time.
Absolutely, and it get different style, different focus, different. We all like. And it's funny because we'll share ideas with each other, and sometimes we talk about like how would you do this, but mostly it's funny because most of the time writers, we'll talk shop more like editors or publishers or other writers kind of thing, but usually we don't all sit around, at least in my limited experience, talking about, okay, how would you do this scene? Because at that point most people are like, I'm just at the bar having a beer, can I buy you? Like let's just talk like people, which is what we do. But yeah, we all have different tastes, different interests. So yeah, that'd be an interesting thing. Everyone here's going to write a short story about a murder. It starts off this way, go, and you get 3 completely different.
Well, they do that on occasion. Like Karen White has 2 or 3 books out.
Yeah.
She wrote with 2 other authors, and they would switch off. But I think it'd be more interesting to have a plot. Everybody agrees on the same plot, and then write a little novella from everybody's different point of view.
I like that, or at least you have a starting.
Yeah.
The plot. Yeah, you don't have to have like the fully. The plot, even if you did that, it would still be stylistically, they'd be different. But yeah, that would be kind of fascinating. Really cool. Here's a situation, go. Yeah. You get 30 days to write or whatever, and
that'd be fun. You should do it.
You give me an idea. All right, maybe I'll have to try that with somebody.
Yeah, do that. That'd be cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Chris, for joining us. We do have copies of Never Turn Back in stock, and I'm pretty sure we have copies of your first book as well, and we have lots of autographs. So yeah. Awesome. I posted a link in the comments if you want to buy from the website. Otherwise, just give us a call, and we can pull it for you. And Chris, next time you're in the area, you need to stop by and sign our author wall.
Absolutely, I'd love to. Kim, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who came out tonight. I really appreciate it. Yes. Hope you enjoy Never Turn Back, and please support your local indies.
Thank you. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.